Europe, in Austria, but we are serving customers internationally, and we're especially proud of our African branch, which we set up recently in the area of Joburg. So looking forward to talking to all of you here. So Unita, maybe you want to introduce yourself? Consider unmuting yourself.
I said, I'm Anita, I'm the program manager for Cybertec. And yeah, I think we are very excited to infiltrate the African market. It's very exciting what we do. And yeah, it was such a high demand to talk about cybersecurity. Yeah, that that's why we're attending this panel today.
So let's dive into the discussion. Talking about cybersecurity. Basically, we have to see this as an international effort. And let me jump quickly forward to how modern IT security basically looks from our point of view. Basically, security has always been seen only as somebody's gonna hack my company, somebody's gonna do something nasty to me. But basically, we have to dissect this notion of the evil hacker outside, and maybe have a better overview of what can be done in the area of security, just on top of installing some updates or stuff like that. What we've seen recently all over again is that a lot of security related stuff is coming from internal problems. So it's mostly internal versus external fraud. But we've also seen that in case threats are coming from external systems or from external entities, we've also seen that sometimes security is compromised by the way companies have set up their processes, right? So I call it companies are sequential and fraud is concurrent, right? You can easily trick an organization by just doing things at the same time, maybe we can talk about it a bit later. And secondly, once security has been compromised, reaction time is everything, and so is communication. But as I said, from my point of view, security is not only just, let's say, updating some software components. It's also about some organizational issues to have a unified vision of security for your whole company. So that's the way I would see this theme.
Hans, can I just add something here? So
Sure.
I know out of personal experience with the different banks and the financial institutions here in South Africa, for example, if I've got my check account, credit card, don't know what the departments don't talk to each other. In other words, it's very silo. Yeah, they've got a system that can quickly check, can we give Hans a bigger overdraft? Okay, that's it. Okay. So in other words, people don't talk to each other. So there's a lot of internal fraud regarding obviously false IDs, false applications, false, all of that. Okay, which makes sense, which happens. But the thing is, the big thing here for me, from my point of view, would be if the banks or the financial institutions can actually have a one client view. This is exactly what we're talking about now. Yeah. So we see this kind of fraud everywhere. And the other thing is, if a client phones in, and I have personal experience on that, if a client's phone in and I say, listen, I report fraud, there's something that went off my account, then the red tape is ridiculous. I mean, the banks don't even respond. Okay. It's a question of, no, but you have to prove this, you have to prove that. At the end of the day, who lost money? The client lost money. It's gone. Okay. So I hear you. One vision for security would be perfect.
Just to give you a number, I was talking to the spam director of AOL. She was in charge basically shortly after the .com bubble. And she told me that they had 20 million unique complaints per day. So when you were referring to a reaction time of companies, 20 million unique complaints per day. And guess what they did with this information? Nothing. There wasn't even a system to handle it. None of those complaints even get answered. So obviously this requires some technological solutions to automate a lot of stuff, or at least to have a vision of what's going on. Because if one bank account or one email address or one whatever is compromised, it usually means that it doesn't come alone, because it's not worth, hacking a bookkeeper in somewhere in a national park. It's not worth it. You really want to hack, let's say, 1 million bookkeepers. You want to get your handle on 1 million credit cards, right? Yes. So it certainly needs this what you would call unified view, along with reaction time and automation.
Exactly. And also that data that you just said now, 20 million unique complaints a day. They can use the data and look for solutions.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be a perfect thing for, let's say, data mining and analyzing, having trains and everything. But usually the answer is that must not happen. I remember talking to the bank the other day in Germany, and before I talked to this guy, we made some simple automated security check, and we found that some sample database was still installed on the system. And I told him, my friend, you still have the sample database of your technological platform on your system. We found it. And he said, this cannot happen because we do a security audit twice a year. So even if you point it out already, sometimes they are just in deep denial.
Yeah.
And when we remember what happened to MongoDB last year, when we had, I think, 30,000 databases taken for ransom, something like that. So that's massive. I mean, it's not just a small isolated thing. It's really a massive problem here.
It is a huge problem. Yeah.
So talking about this internal versus external fraud, I mean, internal fraud is definitely underestimated. I heard numbers about internal fraud ranging from 40 to 80%, depending who you trust and depending which area of the economy you are in. So it's really something which is not to be taken lightly, because what makes somebody think that the person next door is more trustworthy than the person on the other side of the street, right? So there's nothing that justifies this type of view. So internally, it's super important. And the question is, how can one approach it? And one way to approach it is simply to over communicate that you're auditing your internal people.
Yeah.
I give you an example. We had a case in Social Security, and the way we deal with social security and police data here in Austria is that if you access somebody's personal data, it's audited. So if you are, let's say, working for the tax office, if you are looking at somebody's data because you're working on his tax return, it's perfectly fine. But if you just go and open the tax account of some random person, if you're even not in this area or something like that, it's absolutely recorded. And it's very likely that somebody's going to knock on your door and ask you, why did you check the accounts of Mr. X, right? And we had one case where somebody was hired into Social Security who got fired during the same week, because what he did was he checked up all the medical records of all his female colleagues on the floor and checked for sexual diseases, right? So they caught the guy and fired him instantly. So it's not just, it's not only just fraud related, it's also, privacy related. But usually, I mean, privacy is one thing. You're not going to die if somebody knows that you're healthy, right? But sometimes it can really be nasty if finances are involved, right? If somebody just loses a life insurance just because it got paid out to the wrong person, under some false pretext. So I would say over communication is one strategy. But there is more. I mean, of course, it's often the case that things are just seen in an isolated way. If you look at
Correct.
a company, you should really see it as a living thing. And if you kick a living thing into the right foot, it's not going to pay attention to the left foot, right?
Yes.
Well, that happens. So having a unified view to see what's going on the left-hand side, it could be that, you know, some payment was missing on one side, but you still give the guy a loan on the other side.
Yes.
So, or a guy might apply for a delayed payment, but on the other side, he's putting in massive money into some savings accounts or whatever. You know, so there's a lot of stuff that can be done in my judgment. How do you see that?
Absolutely. Because the thing is, you know, especially let's say, for example, they falsify my ID and they use my ID for a home loan or a car loan or something like that. If they've got one view of my profile, then they will know that that's not what's happening in my life at the moment, for example. Okay. And the thing is, yeah, I think so. I mean, why must you know if all these false applications comes in with IDs and salary slips and all of those things, those verifications must be completely sharpened up. I mean, if there comes a false ID, it must be immediately flagged. You know, and I don't think it's flagged at the moment. So yeah, I don't know. But I mean, for me, one view is much better because if you've got a person that's managing your portfolio, that person knows exactly what's happening in your life. Okay, so that person needs to understand that. So yeah, I think so. And then yeah, I mean, if you talk about the bigger audience, I just think it will be much easier if a client can have a view of what's happening.
Yeah, and I mean it's something that is doable. I mean, with all those modern AI algorithms, you know, neural network classifiers, deep learning, etc. These days, if you have the data in place, and usually large organizations do have the data in place, it's just not in the same place,
Yeah,
in a reasonably structured format. It's perfectly feasible to do real-time assessments in case something goes wrong, right?
exactly.
Or before something goes wrong. That's even the better way. But this real-time assessment that something is flagged, etc., that's totally feasible. I would say it can be done in seconds or even minutes. Now we
Mhm.
saw that at an international phone provider. Let's call him Skype for the sake of simplicity. And what really happened is if every you know every account had a fraud rating, um, every payment went through fraud checking. So this has to be something that's intrinsic to the company. And attaching a fraud rating to to, let's say, some accounts or something is really something that's feasible these days. And it
Mhm.
also gives you a chance to assess the strategy, to have a risk assessment, to have cost assessment and everything. So unifying data and not seeing a huge organization as a small thing, but as an organism, that's already going to be a big game changer. And what we saw is that if somebody tries to cheat on the bank, or if somebody tries to cheat on an insurance, I mean, those guys are not trying to steal, you know, a cell phone from you. It's going to be massive usually.
Yeah, they
And
do.
what you can do here is what those people usually do is they go for the weakest link.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that your solution has to be perfect. It just has to be done in the best way possible, which means that you're going to chase away the criminals to some other organization, you know? I mean, even that is already a win.
Yeah, that's already a win. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
You're going
So
to break
yeah,
into the weakest house, not into the best fortified one, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I think at the end of the day, take for example our banks. I mean, I think all the banks are in the same position. I mean, they're all getting the same threats. They're all getting the same fraud happening. You know, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing. I mean, the syndicates. I mean, they've planned these things. They plan it. I mean, and then they target the financial institutions. You know, so and they work together. The syndicates definitely work together to go against the banks and stuff like that and financial institutions or anything like that. So it's very challenging. I mean, I must admit it's very challenging. But like you said, the solutions are very doable. Very doable.
Yeah, and there are only so many options. I mean, it's not like there are infinite options to crack down on a bank. I mean, there's There are certain ways, they're repeated all over again. And if you just make those paths a lot harder, I mean, overall, it's going to be a massive win.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the beauty usually is that those projects tend to pay for themselves.
Exactly.
So it's like a weather report. If you invest 1 million into weather prediction, it's going to pay off 12 million in added return, just by
Exactly.
harvesting at the right time, and just um, not having things rotting in the on the fields, right? So, and the same is true with fraud prevention. If you invest, let's say, 10 million rand, it's gonna pay off massively. It's certainly gonna pay for itself. And I think it's beautiful if you got a project that pays for itself. I mean, how cool could it be potentially?
Yeah, yeah. Hans, I just think that I think the banks here per se, I think there are millions, maybe billions of fraud value involved. It's very excessive. I mean, I'm honest. I mean, that's why these the banks keep on asking for any cybersecurity advice, any cybersecurity solutions. It's really a buzzword at the moment. Yeah, it's been for a while already. I mean, for the last 2 years, 3 years already. But I mean, it's exponentially increasing the need for a cybersecurity solution, and definitely, because I'm telling you, there are millions, maybe billions involved that these institutions lose. I mean, they lose it every year just on fraud.
Absolutely. And we also see it in other sectors. Because if the economy gets tighter, if the cake starts to be smaller and smaller because of Corona or whatever, what we see is that people start to be a bit more, let's say,
Create.
creative.
Yeah.
And creative is usually not more productive, it's usually more fraudulent.
Yes. Yes.
So because it's the easy path, because if you cannot go to work because there is no work, you can only go to some place and steal something. That's the way you do it. And we
Yes.
saw that during the refugee crisis, that copper theft ended for
Oh,
3 months. Absolutely no copper theft, because it was way more profitable to bring people across the border. So we see those shifting focuses in the criminal community, I would say. So chasing away or just preventing things is certainly something that's especially important during crisis, because I expect that all those fraud numbers are going up during crisis.
yeah.
But we saw that things like homicide did not happen so much because everybody was at home.
Yeah.
But what we did see was that, first of all, demand changed. Everybody was baking bread, something like that. And everybody else was going to go and steal something from somewhere. So it's certainly, you see during crisis that you should definitely be prepared for the good times as well as for the bad times.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite topics is concurrency, which is often overlooked because people look at processes individually.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so having things look at things individually is usually a problem, because sometimes the error happens if somebody does two things concurrently.
Yes.
So, for example, here, depending on what you're doing, you're either a member of the workers' social insurance or you're a member of the employer social insurance. But what if you got a small company and a job?
Mm.
Those organizations do exchange data, but they
Yeah.
exchange it monthly or weekly. So you can trick the system by just making two applications at the same time, ending
Mhm.
up in different offices, and that's already gonna cause an issue just by sending two applications to two offices. I mean, it's already gonna kill the system. So, and it's so simple. Imagine what happens if you do that in an organization spanning the globe. I talked to Daimler, the Mercedes guy, the other day, and I think they got 400,000 employees worldwide. So imagine how much concurrency you can basically use to trick the system.
Yes.
And that basically means that the solution to the problem is to exchange data more rapidly, or do basically some instant reporting into the same systems. Companies tend to think in boxes. So you got box number A for applications, box number B for refunds, box number C for whatever, right? So one client may end up in 4 or 5 departments for different things. And if you
Yeah.
know how to play the system, that's certainly not going to work for the organization. So um, they do exchange data from time to time, but it's by far not fast enough. It's by far not integrated enough. And it's by far not secure enough, meaning obfuscation and condensing information. So data is one thing. What you want is information.
Absolutely. But the thing is, most of the large organizations, I mean, they've got so much data, so much data. I mean, you can play with what information you're looking for.
That's the point. I mean, data, if we stop seeing data as a burden, but see data as an asset, a lot of data is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because what made Google and Amazon and all the others great was the fact that there is a lot of data. It's not that, okay, we don't have data, that made us great because we don't have to pay for storage. But what made it great is a lot of data. Just to give you an indication what I mean by that, there is a test data set for image recognition, which is widely used in the industry. And this data set consists of 250 million images. There is no such thing as too much data. Doesn't exist. There's only, you can always reduce data, ignore it, do whatever you want. But
Yeah.
if it's not there, well, it's game over.
Yeah.
So you certainly need those huge quantities of data in order to do something useful. So I would see that as a chance and not as a burden. What do you think about that?
You know what? I think if I think in the organizations, I think there must also be like a mind shift regarding data. Because the thing is, you know, the companies usually, I mean, you know, we've dealt with so many companies, Hans. Then, if you walk in, some data is on a server, some data is on a laptop, some data is there, some data is there. I don't really think people really understand the value of data. Okay, to have one set of data is perfect because then you can play around, you can do magic with it. But really, organizations per se, I mean, most companies that I talk to, they phone me and says, listen, can you please just consolidate our data? Because they've got no idea where all their data is. And then it's also in different formats and stuff like that. But the thing is, the moment you start consolidating a data set, a few data sets, um, you've got magic in your hands. You know, you must just use it and optimize what you want to know and what you want to do and where you're heading in your business or whatever. I mean, you can do so much with your data.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when talking about financial institutions, you absolutely right on target. I mean, there is one simple question that's basically going to kill every big corporation, and the question is, how many customers do you have? And they're going to give you a number, and then you're going to ask them, what is a customer? What's the definition of a customer? And
Yeah.
I can promise you they have no clue. So if you have a company, a private account, and maybe some pension, whatever, how many customers is that? Is the company a separate customer? Are you the customer? You get 3 bank accounts. How many customers is that? One bank account is shared, with your husband. So what is a customer? And I think people are making decisions on the wrong assumptions
Yeah.
by not unifying and cleaning those data sets, by just speaking about the same thing.
Mm.
Because it does make a difference if you got 1 million clients or 2 million clients. And the difference is not anything that changed in the field. The difference is really that you just counted differently.
Mm. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we saw that all over again, that all this stuff was wrong. I mean, we had cases in banking where they did not even use the same exchange rates within the same department. So they didn't even use similar exchange rates, and that's an issue. I mean,
Mm.
if you're loaning out $10 million, it would be nice to at least agree on the exchange rate, right?
Yeah, at least.
Inside the bank.
Yeah.
Not even talking about the client, I'm talking inside the bank.
Yes. Yes. No, I hear you. Yeah, you see, the thing is, if we look at, I mean, I had a personal situation now for almost a year, and every time I say, listen, please, can you just stop this payment because I don't have an option to cancel this, and they were just not able to help me. They just says no. You must prove that you cancelled it, and then we will stop the payment. So things like that for me is actually unacceptable. Because purely, if I say to my bank, listen, this is fraud on my account, stop it immediately or reverse it or whatever, they just don't do it. They just don't do it. For more than a year now, I've battled with that. And I feel how many other clients are losing money out there and the banks don't listen. They just don't listen because they've got processes to follow.
Yes.
Now, it's ridiculous. If a process doesn't work, if a process isn't practical, I mean, I think if I say to you, this is fraud on my bank account, it's fraud. I haven't done it. I mean, what can I do with it? And then if your response is, yeah, but you need to cancel it first, you send through, then I must send a proof of cancellation, then only they will stop it. So in the meanwhile, I lost 8,000 Rand, but I mean, is the bank going to give it back to me? No, they're not, because it's not responsibility. So I just feel sometimes the bank's reactions are the process are not right. It's not practical. It doesn't help. I mean, I know there's certain processes to follow, but a process is only a process on paper. I mean, you must look at every single scenario and sort that out. And I mean, I do believe there are thousands of scenarios, but still, there must be a basic one. When a client phones in and says there's fraud, do something about it. Cancel the card, cancel the check account, give the person a new check account, put the person on a new credit card or something to stop it. I mean, but they just, oh no, we can't do that. No, we can't. No, we can't do that.
I think
So
we
things like that reactions, I can't be the only client that's frustrated with these processes.
I think it's one also has to see that this whole security context has to be seen in the context of usability, because usually security always hurts. I mean, somebody calls up and says, "Could you make this transfer for me?" Could be everybody. So I think that the banks over the years, because there was so much stuff going on, I think they in some cases they fell into some sort of default mode which says no, right? Whatever it is, the answer is no, right? Don't disturb anything. The answer is no. So I would say that if you have uh, better technology around, you can start to be more customer centric,
Yes.
because you will have a better feeling of the risk exposure. So
Yeah.
it's not just the fraud side, but it also opens the door for being more user friendly. And this could be like, identifying your standard processes. I mean, what is everybody doing? What does it mean for? I mean, it could even be like, where are we going to put the next bank? We're going to put the shop, etc. So it's all the data coming out of this fraud analysis and out of this unified view. It's not only about fraud, it's also about usability, it's about improving your network, uh,
Yeah.
of your representations. You can use it to see if people are working properly. So there's so much stuff you can do with data. So it's not just isolated to fraud, but while
No.
I agree with fraud, it's the most obvious thing. But in order to
Yeah.
fight fraud and in order to improve usability, the data you need at the end of the day is the same. So
Yeah.
unifying your data sets is always going to be beneficial, and that should be also a core message, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever you want from your data. Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So it's king. The next thing is, as you stated already, is reaction times.
Mm.
Basically, when you are committing fraud, so if you want to cheat on somebody, what you certainly want to do is you want to be quick, right? You don't want to drag on the process forever. You might drag on the preparations, but once you committed to basically doing something wrong,
Mm.
you want to do it quickly.
Yes.
So the problem is that if you're running millions of transactions every day, obviously you cannot screen them manually. What you do need is some machine assistance. So you need a
Mm.
little robot who's going to take care of stuff. And this robot or this AI or whatever you want to call it certainly has to operate in real time. Because
Yes.
if you're gonna check once a month, just to show the other extreme that something is wrong, I mean we can all agree that after a month, the fraudster hasn't
Mm.
only just stolen the money, he has already spent it.
Exactly.
So it's also a matter of time. It's a matter of reaction time and a matter of how quickly you can integrate this data. And there are certainly technologies out there who are capable of just pushing things together quickly. So, and when I'm talking about quickly, I'm not talking about let's say just once a day. I'm really talking at something close to real time because there was let me show you what I mean by real time. Last year, there was an issue in the repo market in New York where all of a sudden interest rates spiked to 10% or 16% or something like that. And it
Mm.
happened really, really quickly. It just out of the blue, you know. And the same is often true with organized fraud, I have to say. So finally, communication. If you already know that you're being watched, you start to behave differently.
Yes.
You go to some different place, you try to hide in the shade, you don't do it in you don't want to do daylight robbery, right? You don't want to be seen. So one strategy, which is I would say the easier one to implement for a start, is to over communicate that something is going to happen. And once you
Yeah.
catch somebody, make sure everybody's going to notice, right? Just send them in chains through the whole building, just to make sure that everybody's going to see them. um, and that's going to change things. So in addition to the technical side, which means integrate data, artificial intelligence, etc., it's also a matter of communication, of awareness, of spreading the message. So what you need here is really unified concept, which is perfectly feasible. It's perfectly going to pay for itself. It's a long-term investment. It's not something that's going to cost money instantly. It's going to cost money instantly, but it's going to save more relatively instantly. And of course, it has a long-lasting effect. So it's basically like recurring income, right?
Yeah.
It's recurring savings.
Yeah.
So that's certainly something that has to be taken into account.
Absolutely.
So we're at the end of the panel, I would say. So any closing words from your side?
No, I just think that, you know what, we can definitely, from a skill side. Okay, there's so much that can be learned through the solutions we've got, through all our clients that we face on a daily basis. That we do offer very, very nice training. We've got very nice courses. So I really think, if there's people out there who learn more about how we do our solutions, what our approaches are. I mean, we collaborate with so many other network partners already, that we can really, really upskill definitely some individuals or some groups of people, teams at some of the banks or the financial institutions or other large organizations that are experiencing a serious cybersecurity. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So from our side, we provide everything from the knowledge to the actual implementation.
Exactly.
Someone
Yeah.
is doing full service.
Yes.
And yeah.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for spending your time with us. I hope it was informative, and I hope you liked the program. And we're looking forward to hearing from you again very soon.